Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you at today's presentation. I do hope it proves to be enlightening. As was mentioned earlier, it's entitled Attention Bean Counters, 5 Ways to Enhance Sage Intacct. And we're going to have a little fun with the word bean today, and you'll get more about that in a few slides. I've got a lot of slides to cover today, a lot of topics to go through. You're actually going to find out that I can't count today, which is interesting, right, because I am a CPA, but I have more than 5 ways to enhance Sage Intacct. So, as mentioned, my name is Philip Massey, Software Services Director for Dean Dorton Allen Ford. I think I've met probably most of you that are likely on the call at some point, but if I hadn't, I welcome you to reach out to me and we'll have a conversation, get to know each other. So before we jump into the materials, let's have a little bit of fun. Did you guys know that today, April 22nd, 2021, is the National Take Your Son or Daughter to Work Day, which I don't think is going to be too hard with COVID in place. Most of you probably have been doing that for about 12 months now. It is also National Girl Scout Day, right? So let's run out and see if we can buy some cookies or something. That sounds good. It's also Earth Day. I didn't know today was so many national days. It is National Teach Your Child to Save Day, right? And the one that's probably the most pertinent to what we're doing today is National Jelly Bean Day. And for those of you that haven't met Kristen Butler, she's our new marketing expert within the software team, and she's also a jelly bean aficionado. So today is one of her favorite days. So let's get into some information here. So don't forget, here's the release schedule again for Sage Intacct, 4 releases a year. We've got one coming up in about 30 days, and maybe exactly 30 days, 31 days. May 21st, release date for R2. So time to start getting excited about it. You'll start seeing the information in the system about it. And actually our next presentation will cover that release. I do want to point out, if you want a preview company for the next release and going forward, shoot an email request to Kim Denton. A preview company is really just a way to see what's coming out in the new features without necessarily having to test it live in your environment. I want to remind you again of the Wednesday Wisdom Virtual Customer Series. On-demand recordings will be made available for each one, and if you need any details, reach out to Kim Denton for that as well too. So lots of emails coming Kim Denton's way. Okay, so today is National Jelly Bean Day. We are running a little contest here, and we're going to give out a special prize at the very end of the presentation for the person who gets the closest to the actual count of the jelly beans. So use that chat feature. I'll leave this picture up here for just a second or two. Use that chat feature and guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. 2 angles, 2 shots. Guess the number of jelly beans you think are in that jar. You can do it now. You can do it later. Just post it into the chat. All right, so on to what you came here for. Objectives of today. We're going to talk about 5 ways that you can get more out of your Sage Intacct solution. And by that, we mean the holistic solution of your Sage Intacct environment. So we're going to talk about the things you see on your screen: AP automation, reporting, expense automation, asset management, data integration, and as I said, I can't count to 5, so we're going to talk about some bonus items as well. So a lot of things to cover today. AP automation. All right, so let's start out with that one. So we've seen really an increase in AP automation as a result of the COVID pandemic. People couldn't come into the office. Printing checks wasn't necessarily a possibility, or at least it wasn't easy. and then maybe having to chase someone down to sign those checks, all sorts of different logistics issues made AP automation solutions a lot popular. Ultimately, though, an AP automation tool is going to streamline, it's going to automate your processes, it's going to make the workflow approvals both documented as well as electronic and automated. Typically, often includes payment capabilities inside of it, and often does give you better visibility and control than just simply using a paper-based process. So now, when you guys get these slides, and you'll get copies of these slides to be able to go back through and peruse at your own leisure, the URL at the bottom of this page is hyperlinked. This will take you to a website called G2. It's one of my favorite user-verified review websites. You can go to g2.com and really look up most any kind of software solution, and in the last year and a half, 2 years, you're able to also look up consulting organizations. So as a plug, if you're a Dean Dorton customer and you would go out and give us a review, that would be fantastic. But you've got G2 there. You can take a look, and they actually rank all the different AP automation solutions. So there are literally dozens of vendors that you can choose from. While the COVID pandemic has made it something that is much more talked about now, it certainly is not new. It actually was one of the first areas within accounting system applications to have add-on vendors come into the works. So you've got solutions out there from third-party organizations like Bill.com, MineralTree, AvidXchange, Beanworks, Tipalti, Stamply, PN3 Solutions, Plate IQ, Procurement, American Express, and PayPool, as well as Sage Intacct has their own check delivery service as well. Now, AP automation can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. There can be a lot of tools involved in the process. There can be a lot of steps in the process that are solved. And I say that because actually, Dean Dorton has a product that we are proud of, that we developed, that is called Vendor Maker. So if you need a vendor approval process, for example, Vendor Maker may be your solution. All these tools on this page do some form of AP automation. They're not all exactly the same by any means or any stretch of the imagination. Some handle purchase order processing, some only work with AP. Some send payments, some don't send payments. Some specialize in sending payments. So there's a lot of different areas in here. And although there are dozens, we at Dean Dorton typically work with just a handful of those. Doesn't mean those are the only ones that are any good by any stretch. Also doesn't mean those are the only ones that we work with. But out of the dozens, we did kind of have to narrow it down a little bit. So let's take a look at some of these in general a little bit more deeply. So one of the more popular ones that a lot of organizations will look at is Bill.com. Okay, Bill.com is a tool from CPA to Biz, which is a part of the AICPA, or affiliated, I should say, with the AICPA. It's been a tool that's been around for a very long time. I remember vividly using it many years ago, attached with Great Plains, or some people say Great Pains, but anyway, attached with that and loving it. And actually, when I was running my own company before coming on board with Dean Dorton, Honest truth is that Bill.com was the one software solution that I would really have fought anyone to try to take away from me. The efficiencies of it, the ease of use of it, the set it and forget it capabilities of it are just really fantastic. So it does everything in the process from capturing to approving to paying and to reconciling, which includes an automatic sync with Sage Intacct. So it handles the whole process. You could have all three of the solutions that I'll show you. You could have an email address, for example, where the invoice comes into. That email address serves to capture the document, parse out maybe a PDF that is attached, and then that triggers the process, right? So you'd pull up the PDF inside Bill.com, you'd look at it, you would code it to your GL accounts if that's what the case is. You might send it for approvals. Once it's all approved, it would be paid, and then the reconciliation process would sync everything back over into Sage Intacct, right? So helps automate and handle that whole process. And again, during COVID and having to stay in the home, especially there in the beginning, very handy to have something that would do that entire process, including making those payments. So here's a screenshot, right? End-to-end financial workflows and process payments. So you've got here on this screen where Bill.com's got a very, very intuitive computer interface for a laptop or a PC. And then also it has a very well thought out and easy to understand phone interface as well too. So the great thing about that is if you are out and about, you don't have to hurry to get to a computer or struggle to get to a computer where you could do what you need to do. You can actually do all of that from your phone. So really, really super convenient. So
Philip, we got a quick question about Bill.com. Does it help with timesheet and projects that are paid via AP?
Let's hold that question because there's more details behind that.
Great, I'll bring it up at the end.
Possibly, yes, but there's more details behind it. So
thank you.
One of the other solutions to look at is a solution called Use. Use is one of the tools that we look at when maybe there's some features of Bill.com that don't quite meet what the customer needs. And you know, we'll put Use as kind of a middle tier product. It might have some more capabilities than Bill.com, but maybe it's not quite a Cadillac. Here's some of the benefits of it. Reduce invoice processing time from an average of 45 days to 5 days. Lower your overall AP processing cost. Improve supplier relationships, right? Reduction in late payments. So Use has many of the same qualities, many of the same benefits of Bill.com, but it does have a few more things inside of it, or a few characteristics of it that are above maybe what a Bill.com could do. And a lot of this comes down to personal preference. It's not really truly so much that one is that much better than the other, but it's personal preference and exact requirements. So Use is also a great solution to take a look at. And then we have Mineral Tree. So Mineral Tree is a tool that we've got several customers that are using. It is what I would consider one of the top tier solutions to the AP automation process. It again does the same kinds of things. AP interface, it's bidirectional integration with Intacct, processes payments. When you get in some of these larger systems, they will often have payment cards that they will use to make those payments so that you can get rebates or refunds on the money that you pay if your vendor will accept those payment cards. So they typically, build that into the pricing. It helps offset your costs and may give you a top tier system for a non-top tier price, depending on how much you can use that. Mineral Tree is key. It interfaces with purchasing, purchase order processing inside of Intacct. So it's not just an AP solution, but it can interface earlier in the process. It also has some automated invoice capturing in it, so you can set some automation within that coding process, maybe to help things go even faster. Here's a couple of screenshots of Mineral Tree. So you can see on the top portion of this, you've got your invoice, and then the bottom portion is where the coding takes place. So it's a pretty friendly environment that you're looking at with this. You've got a dashboard, you've got tabs at the top. It's a pretty user-friendly environment. Here's a screen listing of unpaid bills, and you've got an ability to come in here and check boxes and make payments on it, and all the while seeing the details of the payments that you're going to make. If you're approving those payments, then you've got a screen where here in this example, you've got 10 payments waiting for approval, 6 payments on hold, and then a series of buttons over here where you can approve all or individually approve payments to be made. And of course, all of this is hyperlinked so that you can click back through and see originating documentation and things like that. One of the other really nice features of Mineral Tree that not many, if any other systems do, is they actually pass a copy of the PDF to Intacct. In most other cases, it is a hyperlink to the documentation and not a copy of the documentation. And last but not least, I want to let you guys know about something that is coming from Sage Intacct. It's a new feature that's going to be available. It is Intacct Vendor Payment Services powered by Corporate Spending Innovations. So we're leveraging CSI's trusted payment platform to give you a lot of the benefits that you're seeing with some of the solutions that we just mentioned, but this is built inside of the Sage Intacct solution so that you're doing all of your work inside of Sage Intacct. They are currently they do have a beta program right now. They are not currently taking any more beta participants, but we have been told that that may change in the June-July timeframe. So again, when you tell Kim Ditton happy birthday, reach out to her if you want to get more information on the Intacct Vendor Payment Services module. Paying your vendors by ACH check or virtual card. It's very similar to a lot of the features that you're going to see in something like a Mineral Tree, a Bill.com, or a Use. It's just going to be more built inside of Sage Intacct. All right, so let's talk about reporting. So one of the things that I have always said is that if you can't get the data back out, there's really not much need to put the data in, right? And maybe your auditors or the IRS would disagree with that, right? They probably would want you to put the data in there anyway. But if you can't get it out, then it's not going to make a whole lot of sense to you, okay? So let's talk about a couple of things that are available inside of Sage Intacct that you may or may not be aware of. So there's a module that's been around for a little while now. It was newly added maybe 2.5 years ago. Time kind of flies when you're on lockdown, but it's called the Interactive Custom Report Writer. There is a fee for the module, but it is a very good module for being able to develop some more complicated reports. I liken it to being able to create pivot tables, pivot charts inside of Excel. And you've got that ability inside of the custom report writer to do a lot of Power BI type things. It's not as sophisticated as Power BI, but you do have an ability to go out and grab different kinds of information. Of course, put in parameters and limiters, control the columns that you see, do subtotals where you would want to do them. It has a lot of capabilities for how you write reports and how those reports are viewed. So there's an interactive custom report writer license that is needed for this, and there's also a viewer license that's available as well. And that really gets into whether or not you want to write your own reports, or perhaps you would want us to write them, load them into your environment, and then you run them and get the advantage of the data. Okay? So interactive custom report writer, there's a lot that we could say about this and go through with this. Really don't have all that much time to do that today. So when you get these slides, again, this is going to be hyperlinked, and you'll be able to go out and watch a short demo video of it. And if you want to grab any more information about it, then please reach out to anyone at Dean Dorton, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Now, there's also an interactive visual explorer. This, from what I've seen so far, is much more similar to Power BI than, or those kinds of tools, visual tools, than the interactive custom report writer. This module is new, so there's not a ton out about it right now, but it does look extremely promising. So if you want more information about this, if you want to see what it can do, it does have a lot more capabilities for graphing and charting and specially designed reports that give you kind of that dashboard look and feel within Intacct, and it's got a tremendous capability to pull all kinds of different information into the report, combine it together, and give you some data that you can really sink your teeth into. So Interactive Visual Explorer, if you want more information on that when you get the slides, Sage Intacct is actually hosting a webinar May the 14th, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's an on-demand webinar to go through the Interactive Visual Explorer. This blue underscored area here is a hyperlink for you to be able to register for that webinar. So when you get the slides, just click here and you can jump in and take a look at it. So they are constantly improving the two products, and these are a list of improvements that were made with the last release. So updating your library content, and by the way, both of these come with sample reports, sample libraries. ICRW takes a little bit to get those. IVE, they're built into the package. So they come with samples to help you get up and running quickly on those products. But here's a list of some reporting enhancements from the last release where they're adding to the reporting library and also adding some functionality to the Interactive Visual Explorer. So both of those products are built inside of Sage Intacct. They do both have a cost, but you know the hope is that everything I show you, even if it has a cost, it has a tremendous ROI with it that's going to more than pay for itself. So lastly, I want to show you a little bit about a company and a product that I am really, really intrigued by. Every time I look at it, they've added functionality, they give it more capabilities inside the system, and it really just performs extremely well. And besides that, they are located here in Blue Heaven, the home of college basketball and all college sporting events, UNC Chapel Hill, right? So they're located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So they're right down the road from the Raleigh office of Dean Dorton. But they develop really a series of connectors, and the Sage Intacct product is included in that series of connectors. And these connectors can do all kinds of things. They have a sync connector. So if you want an offline data warehouse of your Sage Intacct data, you are just a few, literally, clicks away from having that offline data. We at Dean Dorton have seen that, have worked with that product, have pulled some of our internal data down into a localized SQL server. You could pass it to an Azure server or an AWS server. So you've got a sync capability that does have a Power BI adapter for Sage Intacct. And this one is potentially the most interesting. And I'm going to take just a second here, if I can bring this over, and if it makes sense. So they have a connector for Microsoft Excel for Sage Intacct. So if somebody could just give me a confirmation real quick that you can see the Excel screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure. So what I have here is I'm in Microsoft Excel. This is Office 365 Excel. But here is a list of customers that I have pulled out of Intacct, and I've got them here in Excel. And it's a very straightforward process. If I click here, for example, on sheet 1, and I go to the See Data tab that you get when you install the See Data connector, I'm going to pull data from Intacct, which I have already configured to connect to one of our demo environments. And then I can hit Select, and I can punch in Item, select the item table, say OK. This gives me a list of columns, data fields. If I don't want some of them, I just uncheck those boxes. I can limit my rows. I can do a lot of different things. If I say OK, then it begins the process of pulling that data down. So now I have a list of all of the items that are in my system. And you might think, hey, that's great. That's great. What can I do with that? Well, let's say, for example, that I wanted to set a couple of these with a different product line ID, or add a product line ID to some of these. Maybe that's a fire door inspection. Maybe that's also wine accessories, right? And you can notice that they're red. Well, what I have the capability of doing is updating Sage Intacct. So if I click here, and I click Update All, and I confirm, it's going to reach out and it's going to update Sage Intacct. I now have a sheet in Excel that gives me an ability to pull data out of Intacct and to change the data, update the data, and send it back into Intacct. Right? If I put a 36 here and a 650 here, and I click Update, Update All. Yep. Now, it still adheres to the business logic of Intacct, so I cannot come down here and change the item ID and expect that to work. I can't. That won't work. I can't change these record IDs. That won't work. But any of these additional fields in here that are editable in the front end, I can absolutely change them inside of here and hit Update Rows, and then it updates what is in Sage Intacct. So I think that's a really cool feature. In addition to just being able to pull the data out, you do have an ability with security set up within the connector to be able to update the data itself. Okay? So we are about at the halfway mark. I'm going to pull the picture up here again of the jelly beans so that you guys can take another look at it and get your jelly bean count. Okay. Well, it looks like that Kristen's son has gotten into the jelly beans. So my advice to you guys would be go ahead and enter that guess, get that chat in, get your guess in now before maybe those jelly beans are all gone. So expense management. Let's talk about some expense management solutions. Again, a bolt-on for Sage Intacct in a lot of cases. There will be an expense involved with it, but the business case, the ROI behind it should outweigh that cost. So tons of solutions in expense management choices. Nexonia, Data Basics, Expensify, TriNet Expense, ExpensePath, Abacus, Tally, and there's a lot more out there. One thing I do want to point out is that you'll see 3 of these on this screen have the word Emburse before them. Emburse is an organization that has gone through the process of acquiring a number of solutions in the same software class. So they own Nexonia, they own Abacus, they own Tally, they own Certify, and I think there may be one more solution there. But what's great about that is all of their solutions interface with Intacct in one way, shape, or form. And so really you can work with an organization like Emburse, even at a small level with something like a Tally, and then you can grow through an Abacus, an Nexonia, maybe eventually get up to a Certify, and you're still with the same family. You can still get the same levels of service. It's really a neat concept to be able to grow with a company like that. So let's talk about the ones out of that panel that we, again, really recommend. And you've kind of got to weed it down a bit and pick the ones that you're going to really try to have a lot of experience with. And Nexonia actually is one of the first add-on solutions for Sage Intacct that I ever worked with, and that's going back to 2011, 2012 with these guys. So great solution, great company. You know, nobody's perfect. There have been a couple of bumps in the road in some of the processes and things like that, but Nexonia is also wonderful about working with you to work out those bumps, right? So, and a lot of times that's really one of the most important things is not only the software works for you, but that the company cares. And you really get that feeling with Nexonia. So they are one of my favorite vendors to work with in the Sage family. And they do expense management. They also do time management. And they do have a bit of an AP workflow as well, too. So I didn't mention them back in the AP workflow, but they do have some capabilities in that area as well. We actually use Nexonia at Dean Dorton, and I used it in my company for expenses and for time entry as well. So here's a screenshot of the phone app on the left-hand side where you're creating expense report. Again, what's great about a lot of these tools is they give you the ability to, say, take a picture of an invoice and create the expense report, add the expense to the report with the picture, with the detailed explanation, all of that while you're doing it, right? So we get to a point again where we're flying on a regular basis. You eat the meal at the airport, you can take a snapshot of the meal, and then you can maybe finish it while you're on the plane or heading for the plane, but you've got that done. You're not worrying about gathering a lot of receipts and finishing this when you get back home. Here's an example of the web browser. So if you're on a computer, Mac, PC, anything like that, this is what your screen would look like. And you can see here where we took a picture of the receipt from the espresso bar. Okay. So that's Nexonia. Again, great company, great people. One of the other tools that we've become aware of, to be honest, in the last year is called Abacus. Mainly became aware of it through the acquisition and the fact that they are part of Imburse. I think it's been more than a year for them for that, but we've just kind of gotten up with them. This is what I would call maybe a solution that's a little under the Nexonia type solution, not necessarily, but it does have some different pricing capabilities, and it does have some different capabilities within the application itself. So I would say these are two expense management solutions that definitely could meet an ROI, but they may meet it in different ways, right? So again, capability to snap a picture, capability to connect to credit cards and download transactions. Both of these applications have that, and a lot of companies will use it just for the credit card connection as well too. So here's an example of a screenshot for how easy it is to configure and set up some different aspects of Abacus. So you've got some flexibility in here as far as how approvals are done within the software for different expenses. Right, a lot of choices there for how those hierarchies are configured. And then there's a tremendous amount of reports inside of Abacus, and those reports have a lot of flexibility built into them, and it does have a report writer as well too that can be utilized. Okay, so asset management solutions, that's one thing that a lot of organizations look for. A lot of companies are doing it by hand, just like the AP automation. A lot of companies are doing this stuff by hand now. So a great chance to really improve and automate what you have. Asset management. So here we're talking about fixed assets, chairs, tables, desks, cars, buildings, whatever it may be that your fixed assets are. Here, our choices are a little bit more limited, but still wanted to go over it with you because there's a lot of companies out there that are tracking assets in Excel, maybe making manual entries each month for the depreciation expense and things like that. And an asset management solution would definitely help you automate that process. So really there's two for the most part. Now there's more than two. There are a couple of others that are out there. There's some that have come along in recent years, but really for us there's two that we deal with. So first of all, Intacct has a fixed asset module. It is native to Intacct in the fact that it appears on the Intacct price list. The Intacct fixed assets module was not originally developed by the Intacct team. It was part of an acquisition that Intacct made a number of years ago, and the fixed asset module was something that they acquired as part of that acquisition. So it is part of Sage Intacct now. It is a powerful fixed asset module. It tracks multiple books. So if you want to do AMT, tax, federal tax, state tax, corporate books, and it has a number of different depreciation methods, including the ability to create your own custom depreciation method. You can have unlimited assets. You can link assets together so that you've got perhaps a table and a chair, perhaps a desk and a chair, perhaps a desk and a computer. You can link those assets together. You can tag them to people. You can tag them to locations. Lots of choices for how those assets are tagged. It does have a capability in it for physical inventory. It's got extensive reporting built in it that can be enabled, and it is integrated with AP, purchase order processing, and GL. So if you're using Excel to track your assets and you have a large number of them, this is a good option for you. Now, truthfully, our favorite option for fixed assets, as long as the folks at Sage aren't listening, is Asset Edge by a company known as Whipfly. Whipfly is a CPA firm. They bought Joseph Eve CPA firm. And Joseph Eve is the original developer of Asset Edge, but their team does continue to maintain it today. It's a tested, awarded solution. It is an add-on, but it looks, smells, and tastes like Sage Intacct. It's integrated to purchasing and general ledger, just like the Intacct Fixed Assets module is. The fifth bullet point can be important. It's less expensive. They do have a tier system for their asset pricing, but even with unlimited assets, it's a less expensive option. We've got a number of clients that use it and are very happy with it. You are limited to one book, and you don't have as many depreciation methods. So the one depreciation book is kind of the biggest differentiator between Intacct Fixed Assets and Asset Edge. And again, the book is going to be, whether you keep corporate tax information, whether you keep tax or corporate asset information, tax asset information, AMT, etc. Right? So if you only do one book, Asset Edge, great option. Pricing starts around $1,000 a year for it. It goes up a little bit from there, but it's a great option for tracking fixed assets inside of Intacct and automating that process of buying an asset, turning it into an asset, depreciating it over time, etc. It's fully connected. So let's talk a little bit about data integration. So this is, I believe, topic number 4, data integration. So there's a few different ways to integrate data with Sage Intacct. There's CSVs. CSV imports are built into the Sage Intacct solution. You are not charged anymore, so it's our first freebie of the day. But you can use the import process. Its most major objects in the system are included, and even templates are included in this process. So not only can you import data into Sage Intacct, but we give you template examples of what that data should look like. So for example, if you go to your company setup checklist, which I had on the previous path, that's under company, setup, and import data. If you go there, you'll see all of the objects that you are licensed for that have a capability to be imported into the system. Notice this is just a subset of those. This is not everything. This is just the very top of the screen. But notice over here I've got highlighted the word template. So again, if you want to import your chart of accounts, you don't have to come back to us to ask for a format of a template where you can import your chart of accounts, where you could import your employees, your departments, your general ledger transactions, your AP bills. You don't have to come back to us. You can go into this part of Sage Intacct and you can click on template right here, and it will open up an Excel sheet of a template that will explain to you what the file needs to look like. It gives you field sizes, field types, everything is included in that template. We do have some third-party tools that are available if you want to look at those. The typical use case of a third-party tool to interface data with Intacct is that they give you a graphical user interface on top of the Intacct API. And that gives you an ability, in a lot of cases, really to just drag and drop fields from your source to your target and map them out. Some of our favorites are Tibco, used to be known as Scribe, But in TIBCO, you create your maps, you control your scheduling. You can have as many maps as you would like. You can manipulate the data any way you would like. It's got a lot of capabilities inside of it. And we've got a few folks on staff that are very fluent in it. And in fact, we wrote the connector for TIBCO Cloud for Sage Intacct. So a little skin in the game there, but still great application. One of the other top apps for it is called Workato. Workato's got a great name, does a lot of really good things, fairly expensive, not quite as user-friendly to me, but that's just me. But Workato is out there, great solution, deserves a look, again, helps automate the data flow into and out of Sage Intacct. So then there's the application programming interface, and that really is the heart of moving data in and out of Intacct. It's API is what it's commonly referred as, or potentially web services. From everything that I've heard, and I'm not a developer, to be honest, but from everything that I've heard through other people who are developers, going to trade shows, things like that, Sage Intacct has what is arguably the most powerful, straightforward web service of any accounting solution. I was at a show and a vendor told me that they took 3 months to develop an interface with a different solution. And that same interface took 3 weeks with Sage Intacct. In fact, that vendor's logo has been on one of the slides that I've shown you. So it's a much quicker ramp-up time to create that interface. There's a tremendous amount of documentation at developer.intacct.com. And we have a gentleman on staff who is one of my favorite people in the world, Ian D'Amelio. He knows a lot about the API and has written a number of interfaces, including our marketplace product, mConnect, and he's also advised on a lot of projects as well too. So if you need any information on that, please reach out to us. But again, we talk about integration because integrating data is a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot less time consuming than hand keying that data into the system. So if you've got some data that needs to be pushed into Intacct on a regular basis, operational system, other kinds of management systems, anything, customer relationship management systems, CRMs like Salesforce, Dynamics, any of those tools, talk to us because we can help you streamline your processes. So that was number 5. We're at 250 according to my computer, so that gives us about 10 minutes. But I did tell you that I couldn't count. So as long as the moderators aren't going to tell me to be quiet, I'm going to keep going because we got some bonus free stuff to talk about. So free stuff. From this point forward, everything I talk about is free. All right, so one of the things that in the years I've been married that I've learned about my wife is that she loves a list. Ladies, if you're out there, gentlemen, if you love a list, raise your hand. Making lists, checking things off, going through it, right? Well, how many of you knew that checklist functionality was added to Sage Intacct? This is a free feature. It was added recently to Sage Intacct. It is a great feature. Well, so you see on the screen here, it can be used for things like month end. So think about month end checklists, quarter end checklists, year end checklists, any kind of checklist, new contract checklist, new project checklist, anything you can make a checklist for. It's a really super simple process. This, like many things that are added with an Intacct release, you do have to give yourself permissions to it in order to see it. So if you don't see it in Intacct, it's not because you didn't pay for it, it's because the security's not set for it. Give us a call, shoot us an email. We're happy to get it turned on for you. guide you in that right direction to get that turned on. You do have a capability, as you see here, to send out emails with this. So this lets, in this case, Dick Grayson know that Bruce Wayne has assigned him a task in order to do for the month-end close. They track business activities, as I said, month-end close checklist. As they improve the checklist process, they're going to give dependencies. So one item can be dependent on another. They're going to allow you to import CSVs, and doggone it if they aren't going to take you into my next topic, which they will allow you to collaborate on assignments and checklists, which if you don't have Collaborate turned on in your Sage Intacct system, it's free, and you need to turn it on inside your Sage Intacct system. You're basically taking a messenger app and you're embedding it in your transactions. So here in this case, Drew said, this price looks to be about 20% higher than what we paid in the past. Is this right? Okay, asking Bob, hey, did you type this wrong? Did you get this wrong, Bob? Well, Bob says, a new contract was put in place for a premium version of the product to meet regulations. The higher price has been authorized. Mind your own business, Drew, right? You know, okay, so he didn't say that, but Drew asked a question about a transaction. Bob came back and replied, and the great thing is it's all inside the transaction. Bob could even attach a copy of the contract, if he had it, to his response, and Drew could see the contract as well. Now, had Bob been thinking about this in the beginning, perhaps he would have attached the copy of the contract to the requisition as well. So lots of things there. But if you don't have Collaborate turned on, you need to turn it on. Dashboards. How many people are virtual show of hands, how many people are creating dashboards, using dashboards? How many people have charts and graphs and reports and performance cards? How many people have all those things in their dashboards out there right now? You know, I don't know how many hands I would be seeing, but probably not as much as I should be. I love a dashboard, and I can't tell you enough to get to know performance cards. Performance cards are great little objects. How's this product line sales doing this year versus last year? How are our expenses on this particular project this month versus last month, right? This actual expenses versus budget. Performance cards are fantastic. They are great, and they're really quick and easy to create. Here's an example of a dashboard. How many people wouldn't love to come into Intacct and see that dashboard every day, right? Maybe not the reds, but a bunch of greens, but really seeing those data objects within your environment. It's one of my favorite reports in a dashboard. This is using the color coding inside of Sage Intacct to give you even the heat maps and the color coding to show you what can be done in reports and dashboards inside of Sage Intacct. If you're not using dashboards, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help you conceptualize what you can do with a dashboard. Last but not least, statistical accounts. I think these are great. In a sense, it's non-financial information. So the examples you see here, revenue, or I'm sorry, employees, square footage, employees broken down by location, outstanding shares of stock. They're tracking things that are not financial information. Numbers of treatments, occupancy, number of new customers. And even inside of Sage Intacct, you can have Intacct track it for you. So you can set the system up to every time you create a new customer, it adds a customer to the count of the list. So if we're looking at it here, for example, we see here that we've got 22 customers. We're up 12 versus the prior month. So take a look at all these things. Ask us any questions you might like. Go out to the Sage Intacct Marketplace. There's a lot of solutions there that might can automate some of the things that you're doing manually now. But please don't ever feel afraid to reach out to us as well too. If you haven't gotten your guess in, you've got about 3 or 4 minutes to get your guess in. So let us know how many jelly beans you think are in the jar. And with that,
Do we have time for a few questions?
I'm okay if you are.
Great. Do you mind if we go back to that original question about Bill.com? Does it help with timesheet projects that are paid via AP?
So the general question there with that is that you have that capability to do the codings. I would want to know more about what you mean by timesheet projects. So that's something we're going to have to talk in a little bit more detail about. So if you want to reach out.
I will happily write their name down, yes.
Okay. Yep.
And we'll make sure that they get contacted. The next question we have is IVE free of a separate subscription?
There is a cost to IVE.
Or is it a separate subscription?
It's definitely a separate subscription, yes.
Great.
I don't have that amount in front of me, but we can get it.
Is it only master data that can be updated, not transaction, correct? I'm assuming that was when you were doing your Excel spreadsheet.
Yep, it depends on, it adheres to all of the business logic inside of Sage Intacct. So if you can change it in Intacct, you can change it there. If you can't, you can't.
Can you add items like project, task, or vendor records too?
Yes.
Fabulous. Well, those were our only questions. I think it's time we get to the correct guess of the jelly beans. I apologize if I butcher your name, but it looks like our winner is Kelly Kwiatkowski with 320 jelly beans was her guess. The correct answer was 384. So congratulations, Kelly. I will message you on the side to get your contact information, but Philip and Kristen, why don't you tell them what they won?
Kristen, I'll let you go with that. And Kelly, you may have been actually closer by the time Kristen's son got done with the jelly beans in that one picture. So.
Yeah, that's a true statement, Philip. I've definitely enjoyed eating these jelly beans, as my son has as well. But yes, Kelly, so we will be getting your information and sending you a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you so much for submitting your guess, and we're glad we get to share it with you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks all the Dean Dorton team for helping me with this, and look forward to the next one in May, which is going to be on the next release and all the great new features.